Rex, how you doing? It's good to see you, my friend.
Hi, Terry. It's nice to be with you.
So, I guess my first question to you is when you were growing up in the Chicago area, if I'm not wrong, right? That's the area you grew up.
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
What was the musically environment like back then when you were really young before you had made it? What was it like as far as a musician trying to play out, be in a band? What was on the radio? Give us a little glimpse into Chicago and what time frame was that? Not so much that I'm trying to find out how old you are, but when I was talking to Steve the other night, Steve Lynch, he was telling me his was the late 60s and then into the 70s.
Yeah, he's just a couple of years before me. I kind of grew up in the 70s, and there was so much awesome music then. Um, I loved Robin Trower was a big, huge guitar influence for me, Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush. And then I had all the conventional guitar heroes, Eric Clapton. I used to love listening to Cream. Um, that was an amazing supergroup, especially their live music. Loved Led Zeppelin, Bad Company, you name it. I mean, anything that was out. I really enjoyed. There was a group called Climax Blues Band, which is not so much known these days, but they, in their heyday, they were really something over and above just their radio singles that they had for pop radio. But did a lot of instrumental music, and Santana. Used to love Carlos Santana, and I was a huge fan of all Southern rock, especially like Texas rock, ZZ Top. My earliest guitar idol, my first guitar hero, was Peter Frampton.
So what was it? What was it exactly that you heard that made you pick up the instrument and start playing?
I was a nerd, socially maladjusted. I was, scared of girls. Didn't have what it took to make the football team or the basketball team, so couldn't do sports. So I just sat in my room and listened to music, and I got a guitar on my 10th birthday, and I already played violin in the school orchestra. So I was just a nerd. I had no friends, no social life. I didn't, just a scared kid. So I just sat and compensated. I just dove into my guitar and I loved it. And I would escape into fantasy world, like when there was a TV show called In Concert, came on every Friday night. That was like destination appointment viewing. You must not ever miss an episode of that because all the rock bands come on. And then there was another show called Don Kirshner's Rock Concert.
Yes.
That was another one. And I saw these great bands. I discovered UFO and Michael Schenker, and he had everybody on there. And and then a lot of dippy bands too. He had disco bands, and I had the whole gamut. But he had the rock bands on there, and he had the guitar heroes as well. So I just get lost in the music. I loved it, and that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to be
Now,
from
now
from
I
the
have a question
early
for you.
age.
Like when I started out becoming a filmmaker, I remember looking at it from my limited knowledge at the time, and I thought it's going to be so hard to learn how to direct a movie because from what I did know, I knew that they oversaw all the production personnel in the film, so you kind of have to know a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
And as a guitar player, did you ever get that kind of almost like awestruck feeling that how am I ever going to be like Jimmy Page or Clapton or Jeff Beck or one of those guys? Did that ever get intimidating to you at all?
Well, my story never happens in real life. It just doesn't. My story is a made for TV movie. Um, I grew up, my favorite band growing up was in high school years was Deep Purple. And then Richie Blackmore went solo, started a group called Rainbow. I followed Rainbow. Deep Purple carried on with a guitar player named Tommy Bolin. They did a couple albums. I followed that. And then eventually David Coverdale broke off and started a group called Whitesnake. And I loved Whitesnake, and I bought all their albums as imports. and they were only available as an import for their first 5-6 albums. I had them all, and then I finally, one day I read in a magazine, David Coverdale has fired his guitar players. He's looking for a replacement. And I was like, oh, like if there was this thing, I must respond to this. If I don't, I will hate myself forever.
Yes.
Like for those people who remember the movie Back to the Future.
Yes.
Well, how are you going to know, Marty McFly, unless you send your demo tape into the record company? How else are you going to know? It's like, so I made a cassette tape of myself playing guitar. I played 2 songs, and I wrote a letter and mailed it to the address on the back of the record. And about a month later, my phone rings. And it's Jim Delahunt, who ran the A&R department at Atlantic Records.
Wow.
The #1 guy.
Wow.
And he told me, he said, well, you're not going to get an audition with Whitesnake because he's got a guy named John Sykes, who is like, leave the rest of us drooling. He's another one of my guitar heroes. It's pretty hard to argue with somebody like John Sykes. If you can get John Sykes, you're doing well.
I loved what John did in Thin Lizzy.
Absolutely.
The Thunder and Lightning album was spinning in my
Cold Sweat.
Oh, yeah.
Still of the Night with Whitesnake.
Yes.
Amazing songs.
Yeah.
Fabulous guitar playing. But then he says, but are you in a band? And I said, no. He said, honest to God, I'm just telling you as it happened. He says, so why don't we build a band around you? And I'm telling you now that my hand started to shake like this. And I had this wall-mounted phone. I'm telling you, you guys out there, things used to be very different. Phones were stuck to the wall. You were tethered to the wall. When you take a phone call, you're stuck to that phone. You can't just put your Bluetooth on and walk around the house like we do these days.
And you know what else, Rex, that no one thinks about now? I remember back at that time, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but you had to consider how long you were on the phone because it was long distance. Now, long distance, you could talk as long as you want. Back then, you're like, oh, crap, I better make it 5 minutes, right?
Right. But so he's on the phone with me. My hand started to shake, and I dropped the phone. As it fell to the floor, it all flashed in front of me. Great. That was my shot. I've blown it. It's going to, as it fell to the floor, I waited for the phone to shatter into 1,000 itsy bitsy pieces. They had that hard ceramic kind of plastic kind of thing that the phones used to be made out of.
It was probably very cinematic, right, Rex? Like the phone was in slow motion. You go, oh crap!
It would have been a great moment for the movie. This is like the Rockstar movie with Mark Wahlberg. So the phone didn't shatter. He picked it. So then it took a couple of years from that point, but he worked with me. He really liked my guitar playing, and this is the guy who. He became my first producer. He personally signed, just name dropping here, just to provide context for the listeners and the viewers. This is the guy who personally signed Foreigner, the group Foreigner, to the Atlantic label. One day in his office, he said, hey, Rex, you want to hear something? I go, yeah. So he pulls out this cassette tape from his desk drawer. So these are the demos of Foreigner, like rehearsing in the basement. So I was privileged to listen to all of their demos. That was the most fun I ever had listening to music in my life.
Wow.
Getting to hear the raw demos before they were assigned national act. And then he also signed AC/DC to they already had a record deal in Australia. They came to New York. Their manager came to New York, and my A&R guy, Jim Delahunt, he signed AC/DC to Atlantic.
Incredible.
And so yeah, we started at the top, and I was this still this scared kid who didn't know anything about music. But I'll tell you what, in those days, once again, no internet. So we had this magazine. It was called the Illinois Entertainer, and in different areas of the country, I'm sure you have little alternative scene music papers. In Nashville, they have the Nashville Scene. Bay Area in San Francisco, they have Bay Area Music.
Yeah, they had it in Seattle too, where I grew up.
Yeah, every city, every major city has got like a little alternative music,
Yeah.
and in the back, they had all the 1-900 sexy chat lines. They had all the ads for all of that, and then after that, you wade through like 6 pages of that, and then you get to the musician want ads, and they had singers looking for bands, bands looking for singers, guitar players looking for bands, at every conceivable category. So I was always driving all over Chicago with that Illinois Entertainer, and I had my tape recorder with me, and I'm trying to audition singers, and I'm trying to find a singer. I couldn't find anybody in Chicago, and yet they had all these bands on the cover. Like, oh boy, did bands ever, they just spent big bucks on photo shoots. Everybody looked like Motley Crue. And I would see these every month. I'd see a different band on the cover. I was intimidated big time. I was like to your question, I see these groups. I go, where do they even know how do they even get clothes like that? I had no idea. Where do they even shop for clothes? How do they get their hair all glammed out like that and all wearing makeup and the spandex and everything? It's like, geez, these guys look like the second coming of Motley Crue. It's like, I can't compete with that. And I just assumed, well, they must be amazing. And then see later on, I've actually gone back and I've heard some of the music. I heard some of the music of some of these bands, and it's like,
oh my God.
Oh,
Yeah.
there is a reason why these groups never made it out of Chicago and why you've never heard of them, because they spent all their money on their image,
Yeah.
but they didn't have any music to back it up. Now, I've always been the opposite way around. I've always thought, well, take care of the music and then, work on your image as you go along. And, that never worked out really well for me. It's like, I always felt bad because, man, I just don't have the hair to be.
Yeah, me too.
To be like, I don't know, well, like Eddie Van Halen, or, it's like the uniform is, oh, you got to have this glam look, and everybody has to have long hair, and you have to be from LA. That just seemed to be, these are the rules, and there is no deviation from the rules allowed whatsoever. So that was the difficult thing about coming of age in the 80s. So I came to my own conclusion that, okay, so the only shot that I'm ever going to get is, since looking like a poster, like a pinup poster, that's not an option for me, because I'm just not a good looking guy in that sense of the word.
Yep.
So the only shot that I'm ever going to get is, well, you're going to have to outplay everybody else.
Well, in relation to that,
I had to sit there with my metronome and just tick, 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 and just try to do scales all day long. I figured that's the only chance I'm ever going to have. Well, and to an extent, it has paid off somewhat for me.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story that I've never told you before in the years we've been friends.
Okay.
Which the viewers will probably find interesting. It relates to what you just said, and proof that you accomplished it to a degree. So in the mid 80s, specifically 85, I was stationed in the U.S. Army at a place called 189th PSC in Germany. It's actually West Germany. The time was divided. And, I've been a heavy metal hard rock listener since I started my first BTO album in the early 70s as a boy. So I'm sure you were similar to this, maybe Rex, in the same way. But I would go out and buy a lot of albums. I swear to you, some of my paychecks I'd get in the military, I'd go right to the record store and spend most of it on heavy metal and hard rock albums. I wasn't a guitar player, but I was a listener, and it was especially guitar centric. Like that was my focus. So the reason I'm telling a story is I made a friend in Germany there, and we would play albums. Like he'd buy albums and play stuff for me, and then I'd buy albums that were different. And sometimes we tape stuff off each other, et cetera. Remember back in the tape trading days, right? Cassette. So around, I'm trying to remember exactly where I bought Fierce Heart. I didn't get the LP, I got the cassette. I actually still have it downstairs somewhere. So I bought the first, and that came out, as you know, in '85. And I think around the same time, the first Rough Cut came up, and Loudness. And there was another band that I brought to my friend's place because he had a better stereo than mine, and he was actually a guitar player. So I brought them over, and we're listening to Loudness and Rough Cut, and Fierce Heart. So I give them all of them. Yes, Loudness. So I give them the tapes to borrow for a few days to get, make copies or whatever. I go back to him and I said, "What did you think? What did you like the most?" He goes, "Well, I really like the singer in Rough Cut. That guy's got a great bluesy voice. But I'll tell you, the guitar player I like is Fierce Heart." And he put on Echoes, that's what it's called, the first track. Give us a piece of Echoes.
Let's see. I don't remember it that much.
Yeah.
It was just a solo, and it worked for me. And when I heard, my Eddie Van Halen influence is just that, boy, Eddie, this is the gold standard. This is the diamond standard. This is the bar. The bar doesn't get any higher than this. And Eddie did, well, if Eruption is good enough for Eddie, then that's the way you do it. So yeah. I made a commitment. I said, well, so I have to try to do likewise, and not that I would ever dare to compare anything that I've done to Eddie Van Halen, but just the inspiration to, hey, try to create a little guitar piece, a little Eruption styled guitar piece of your own. Whenever you're working on a new album. So I've always done that. And, I'll be honest with you, they haven't all been great, but at least I have always consistently tried to put that out. And some of them have come out pretty well. And then I realized later on over the years, well, that's a little branding thing too. You can always tell when there's a new Rex album because there's always a little guitar piece. And then people go, and then the reviews come out and go, oh yeah, here's like a third generation down, watered down, poor imitation of Eddie Van Halen. It's like, well, I'll take that, because,
yeah, you'll take that.
Because that's what it is. But that's my little Van Halen influence right there.
But how do you like, Rex, how my friend picked you as the guitar player?
I love it.
Out of Rough Cut, who was great, Loudness was great. I like those guys. But you took the star. And then he actually learned some of your guitar, and he would start playing, especially that Echoes has that like keyboard part at the beginning. It's kind of moody. And then you kind of come in really kind of soft, and then you build up the speed and get cranking, right?
Right. Well, it starts out with one guitar, and then in the middle section where it's just the guitar, but no keyboard, that is like 16 tracks of the guitar repeating the same parts. In other words, I played the part in the middle with the little arpeggios. See if I can remember a little bit of it. That was the part from the middle, and I played that 16 times in a row. and then we play them all back at the same time. I love that.
Yeah,
That's the Def Leppard approach to building just insane amount of like guitar tracks.
absolutely.
That's the way that I was taught to record guitars. So for me to get down to the point of playing like one guitar sometimes in a recording studio, oh boy, the guitar feels really naked. Yeah, but that's what Eddie did. That was what was so genius about Van Halen, just guitar, bass, and drums, and he would play the solos live with the drummer and the bass player at the same. They all just played together at the same time. I'll just dub in the rhythm guitar later.
Yeah, and talking about Eddie, not to jump off your music, but obviously he passed not too long ago,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
was a shock, I'm sure, to all of us, especially guitar players and fans. The thing about Eddie that, you know, again, I'm not saying it makes me any special, but I did get the first album as a boy when it very early came out. And the thing that always really struck me about his playing wasn't just the solos. He had that great tone. It was an incredible, wouldn't
Yeah.
you agree? And he was also a great rhythm player. Wouldn't you
Uh,
agree?
yeah, I've posted on that well, he played so freely, and you could feel like the fun in his playing. Everything, it just sounds like he's having so much fun when he's doing it, and he totally reinvented the sound of the guitar from the bottom up, and that's his. People think, oh, Eddie Van Halen. Well, yeah, sure, he came out with the hammer-on technique, but which he did. But the other thing that people forget is like, no, he redesigned the tone, because before that, a lot of guitar players were looking for like really, great guitar tone, and you had Led Zeppelin. But
Yeah.
even this, I'm playing through like a modern guitar amplifier with a modern Charvel style guitar build, but it sounded real tinky. It sounded real small
Yeah.
compared to Eddie Van Halen came out with this sound that was just so huge it filled up the speakers.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to get my guitar to sound like. And this guy figured it out. Okay, so whatever he does, that's what I want to do.
Now, going back to the 80s and the late 70s there, I
Yeah.
brought this up with Steve Lynch the other night. Um, for a guitar player or a fan of guitar like myself, I think of that as like the golden age of guitar for me, because
Yes.
not only did you have Eddie, but you had Randy Rhodes and George Lynch and Brad Gillis, Jeff Watson. Um, you had
It was
later
like
Steve,
17 fingers on the
yes,
fingertip.
that Steve Vai, Joe Satriani,
Yeah.
Yngwie Malmsteen. I mean, all these guys were so incredible, right? Then you.
Right. I don't know how it goes, but
Yeah. How did you feel, Rex, when you saw Yngwie the first time? I felt that Eddie, the guitar transformed with Eddie. And then when I saw Yngwie, I said, not that he was the same or even the same height, but I said, this is the next guy that's changing guitar.
um, well, Eddie is even though he's was from Holland, but Eddie is Van Halen is the prototypical rock band from LA. They started the American rock sound. That was Van Halen, and they were the flagship band of American rock. And as I said earlier, my favorite band growing up was Deep Purple, and I have always seen Yngwie Malmsteen as well. He is like the son of Richie Blackmore.
Yes. Yes.
He is the heir to Richie Blackmore and Julie John Roth, and he has this obviously the classical melodies that come out in his playing. I don't really know how it goes, so I don't try to do all the runs, but but that's the classical sound.
Yes.
And that is that's a different style of rock. You have Scorpions, which always have these beautiful melodies, and the Scorpions they're probably more famous for their ballads and their power ballads than their metal, their straight up rock songs. Although but that was a great song because for years and years I had guitar students, and it's like, okay, if you're coming to me on day one and you know nothing about guitar, we can try to learn this little chord progression, and you can learn that on your first guitar lesson.
Awesome.
And walk out and have something you can play Rock You Like a Hurricane.
Can I share one Richie Blackmore story with you that you might be interested in?
Sure.
So when I was making the movie Double Vision 2 years ago,
right,
which of course has 2 songs from Fierce Heart, and
yeah, baby,
right, and
you got it, man.
Yeah, it was great. So we're shooting at this. We were shooting in Rocky Point, which is out in Long Island, more on the North Shore. This was in June of 2018.
Okay.
So we were filming all day in the Pine Barrens, some of the scenes in the woods, and then at night we went back to the restaurant because we had to shoot there, and actually we had dinner there. So as we were having dinner there, I heard that the place was haunted. I didn't know the story of why it was haunted. So I asked the owner of the place, who was helping us. Actually, he gave us dinner for free. He was sponsoring the movie, which is amazing. And he says, back there in the corner, supposed to be a girl was murdered back in the 1800s. And I said, that's where we want to sit. Because I'm not afraid of that stuff. I think ghosts are people. They're not monsters. So, and in my mind, I thought people like attention. So if we go sit there where the ghost is, they're going to like that because they like being around people. So I brought my whole cast and crew. It was not a lot of people that day. We went and sat back there. We had no trouble. We had so much fun sitting there. No ghost. I didn't feel scared. Maybe at the end of the meal, the owner comes over and he goes, "How was it?" I said, "Fine." He goes, "Do you know who that is sitting over there in the dark?" And I couldn't see because the lights were off. And I go, I have no idea who that is. He goes, "Do you know Richie Blackmore?" I go, "Of course I know Richie Blackmore. Deep Purple, Rainbow." He goes, "Well, he's there with his family. He's very spiritual. So he doesn't like the lights on. And he kind of likes the atmosphere of the restaurant because it was the oldest building in that town." So I said to him, "Would it be okay if I met him? I don't want to be pushy, but would it be okay?" So he went and talked to him, came back. He said, "Yeah, it'd be fine." So I went over there with my lead actress, Anomaly McKendry, and I think one other person. And she started talking to his wife, and I was talking to Richie, and I didn't realize I had already talked to him, but I didn't recognize him. He was asking questions. We were shooting very close where he was at. So then we got into this great conversation. I said, "Why'd you leave England for the States? What do you like about Long Island?" And it was great. We talked to him for like 45 minutes.
Awesome.
True story.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So when Fierce Heart disbanded, how long was it before you started Whitecross?
Well, the album came out in '85. The lead singer and myself famously did not get along, and that is me being very kind and very generous towards the former vocalist. So he left and went back to Virginia. I stayed in Chicago. I recruited Robert Reynolds, who became the lead singer, and we played around Chicago area all the way through 1986.
Was that covers or original material?
Well, little by little, we started devolving into a cover band, and we had no direction. We had no help from the label. Once the record was out there, they just threw us out there, and we had a manager who did nothing for us, absolutely nothing, and we needed to be managed. But we wrote a bunch of songs to try to get re-signed on the label, and for whatever reasons, they didn't. I guess they just liked the original singer. So everything went downhill from there. But then I started this little side project with Scott Wenzel and became known as Whitecross. And that's my spiritual side. You know, I appreciate where you're at. I appreciate where Richie Blackmore is at. I appreciate where everybody's at. You know, I started this Christian rock band because that's where I'm at. And Whitecross like had no budget, no this tiny dinky little record label, and we started on a shoestring, not knowing what we were doing again. But it sold like crazy. It got a following, and it was word of mouth, and then we got a couple of breaks, and next thing you know, it just became a big thing on its own. It turned out that that's what people wanted.
Now, at that time,
The Fierce Heart album got a lot of nice reviews,
right?
but Whitecross was the band that people wanted. So
at that time, Rex, I remember Stryper, who I really liked, and was there many other Christian hard rock metal bands at that time?
no, there was a few, but we were, you know, people know about it now, but we were inventing I guess it's a subgenre, or it's a tiny little niche genre within the larger spectrum of, you know, rock music. And then you got this little tiny subset over here, and you got Whitecross, and you got Stryper, and a handful of other bands, and that's it. And but again, so we went out and did that, and we just kind of forged our own path, and not really having a clue as to how we're supposed to do things. And we were the guinea pigs for a lot of things.
So I have a serious question to ask you.
Yeah, sure.
So the fans that were listening to Whitecross and Stryper and other bands like that at that time, how many of them do you think were actual Christians or church-going people versus just rock fans? What would you say the audience was made up of? Because I grew up in a Mormon church. My family was Mormon, very strict, no drinking, no drugs, no cigarettes. To this day, I'd never had a cigarette. I've never tried a drug or pot. I've never even tried pot. I'm being completely honest. And I'm not saying I'm Mr. Do-Good, but, and I haven't been an active Mormon for like 40 years, but the principles behind it, I've always kept as my foundation. Your audience, were they Christians or were they rock fans?
Well, we played in a lot of churches. Okay, so we would do our metal concerts in churches. So we attracted a lot of youth groups. You know, this organized teenage activities for kids through the church, and they would come see us, and we became very well known internationally, and that was the primary venue. And then occasionally I would hear about just things people, eventually it leaked out. And boy, I used to go to the record company and I begged them, like, save your money on marketing in these Christian bookstores. Take the entire marketing budget and just put us on as an opening act in front of John Bon Jovi or Rat or somebody. Everybody said that Whitecross sounded like Rat. There was an uncanny resemblance from the singer, and that was just coincidental. And he had never heard of them, but I did, and I was a fan of all mainstream rock bands, and I was like, oh, this is like, there's a similarity there, let's exploit it.
Yeah.
Why not? You know,
of course.
Got to do. Now people said, oh, they sound like Rat. Well, that's a little overly simplistic. We did develop our own style as we went along. So I wanted to get out to a wider audience. We never were given that opportunity. Whitecross has been like 35 years.
Did you ever get an opportunity to play with Stryper or somebody like that, which might have broken even bigger?
Yeah, Stryper is they're a bit of an anomaly, and they're kind of always a little bit of an asterisk under name. They've done very, very, very well for themselves. A lot of groups have felt like the logical thing for them to do would have been to go out on a tour and bring Whitecross as the opening band, but then they have this thing, we only want to play with mainstream rock bands. They have they're just like a traveling circus. They do their own thing, but they're great. I mean, they're awesome band, and they have they have a lot of fans, both like the people who like Christian music, and then they have a lot of fans, people who like mainstream rock music. The rock lovers, they follow them too. So it's good. They're a great band. So you can't argue with success. You know,
I like them. And by the way,
they have a huge audience, and I applaud that. That's what I would like for myself.
absolutely.
We're all trying to get to that audience point. So
So
and for whatever it's worth, I love Steve Lynch too. Autograph was a fantastic band.
yeah, so I got to ask this question. Growing up in the church environment, like I did with such religious grandparents and my mom, how did the church respond to Whitecross? Not the listeners, but the church themselves. Because I know when I was growing up, my grandma used to say, "Take those Kiss records, they're devil." She'd throw them out. "Take those comic books. You like scary movies." She threw everything out, thinking it was all devil stuff. Did you get any kind of backlash because you were hard rock?
I had some of that. I look at my entire life and I go, well, Rex Carroll is a bit of an asterisk. I don't really fit into any category. Like you mentally, you compartmentalize things. You go, oh, this guy is this other guy is that. Steve Lynch, he's a guitar hero. Van Halen's a guitar hero. Tesla, well, they're just a rock band with cool songs. And then their guitar players go, no, wait a minute now, I got some leads too. You know, but in your mind, you've already labeled them and you've compartmentalized them, and you never allow them to escape from that box. So people try to put whatever box people try to put me into. I don't know, I'm just still trying to figure it all out, I guess. So here we are. You know, it's been great for me to have the opportunity to provide some songs to your movie, and as we go along, I look forward to an acting career.
Yes. Now I got to ask you about that.
Coming up, yeah.
So what bit you to want to do that, to get in front of the camera, especially since you said your roots, you were reclusive, kind of private. What made you want to get out of your shell and be in front of a camera? Eventually in front of a big audience?
I've kind of grown up a lot now. One of the things I realized in music, I've realized that music is, you know what it is, Terry? It's communication. Music is a way that I can tell you how I feel, but if I stumble on my words, sometimes I can tell you, well, I feel like this. And on a different day, sometimes I feel like that, you know. And I can tell you how I feel, and it makes and I can convey something emotional, something that is deeper than, it's another language to express my personality to the world, and hopefully I can give something to the world that adds value to the world. In the arts community, we're always in fear of, well, you know, they're going to cut the music program from the school. It's like the only industry that really counts at the end of the day is farming, because it's food. Yeah, but if that's all there is, then you're not really fully human. Everybody has a story to tell. Everyone has a life that is important, and everyone has significance in God's eyes, and that's my spirituality. So if we can tell a story through a song, I'm all in. If we can tell a story in a motion picture, I'm all in. It's just a natural. You're bringing something. You're adding value to the world.
Absolutely. And I got to ask you this too, Rex. Even I can relate this as a filmmaker. You have to say it from your end as a musician. Some people ask me, they like, how do you keep making movies if you don't really ever make money from it? They're like, I don't even know how you're making these movies where you don't have a big budget and you're kind of scraping things together, and you make a movie and then you make another movie. How did you do that? And then you made another movie. How do you keep making movies? You make no money. And I say to people, well, first of all, I get better each time at what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the bottom line for me personally, Rex, is that's what makes me happy. When I'm creating film, whether it be a movie, a music video, what have you, even a documentary, whatever, but mostly feature films, they're very hard. They're never easy. But that's what gives me enjoyment for my life. Even if I'm not rich, at least not yet. That's what brings a smile to my face. But in no way is it easy. It's very difficult.
Not only are you adding value to the world, but you're also adding value to your own life. That makes total sense to me. I would just have to agree with everything you're saying just about 100% because I feel the same way with music. And as you said, boy, it's hard. You know what's the hardest thing you'll ever do in music? Get a band together and try to keep it together for longer than 10 minutes. You get 4 guys that are all talented, try to get them all in the same room together, and pretty soon somebody's busting out with lead singer disease, somebody else is busting out with, well, my hair is better than yours, and somebody else is busting out with, I can get a better paying gig over with these guys, you know, and somebody else is, well, when are we going to do one of my songs? Well, because your songs are not very good. Pretty soon, so it takes about 10, 20 minutes, and then the band is over. Have I described the movie industry the same way?
Absolutely. And in relation to bands specifically, last fall, maybe a few months back, I don't know if you saw this, but I was on the internet one night and I was looking at some Facebook page. And one of my favorite bands from the mid 80s, around the time your band came out, was Icon from Phoenix. Yeah. I love the first 2 Icon albums, especially. And then the singer, interesting, I'm talking to you, the singer became Born Again Christian.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and he left Icon when they released their second album, which was called Night of the Crime, which I feel might be the greatest melodic hard rock album ever recorded. Honestly, loved it. They should have been huge. What I'm saying is, Rex, is what I saw last summer, which shocked me, was Dan Wexler, the main guy behind the band, the lead guitar player. He said that the singer came back and all original members have come back to Icon. And they're recording a new album, but they are recording new music. And I thought, what are the chances of this band from 35, 40 years ago, the original lineup? And Dan Wexler said, if you're a band, then you better be the original members, period. He goes, we don't care about that other stuff. We want all 5 guys that started this band. I think that's amazing. Would you agree?
Yeah, you know what's amazing? 3/4 of the original of the lineup of Fierce Heart that toured, that played live, Bob Reynolds, Nick Forcione on the drums, and myself, and then the only new guy is Antonio Acevedo, who's played music with me for 20 years. So I feel very fortunate that we were able to bring the guys back together for the new Fierce Heart album that's out.
Wow. And that came out
not only that, but just people don't really know what mastering is. That's the final step in the mixing process. Mastering engineer is very important to the success of the album. So a guy who was formerly the drummer of Fierce Heart became a brilliant mastering engineer. He's the best mastering engineer I've ever worked with. And so he mastered our album.
Wow.
For us. So I feel, man, I see this thread of continuity extending out, 30 and 40 years later. In fact, we were doing our music video in California last summer during the COVID summer. And Bob Reynolds, the lead singer, said to me, okay, so if we would rewind 30 years ago, and if you would have said to me, guess what? 30 years from now, we're going to make a music video in the desert of a song that was originally recorded in 1984 because it's a remake, and you're going to be on this video. He said, I would have looked at you and said, what planet are you from? What parallel universe are you living in? And
that's incredible.
And yet, here we are.
By the way, where can folks get that new album of Fierce Heart? Because I've listened to it. I don't have it yet, but I've listened to it and it sounds darn good.
Fierce Heart, War for the World. If you go on YouTube, there's a single, Out for Blood. There's a video single for that. And there's another video that's coming out next month in February 2021.
And that was put out by Black Star?
Dark Star Records.
Dark Star Records, yeah.
And actually, the video that's coming out is on the soundtrack.
Oh, so guys, everyone out there, you got to check out the song from Double Vision. Absolutely.
So a little synergy happening here, a little bit of synergy.
Yeah. And that song is so good in the film because I really felt, you know, even before we filmed it, we were talking because you guys were recording at that time.
Yeah.
So you said, yeah, I think I've got something that would fit. You sent it to me. And I don't know if you remember, but I referenced Whitesnake. I said something that's kind of soft and gets hard, has that kind of given back and forth.
You asked me for the big power ballad, and I said, I've got just the song for you. And I love the song. And I love how our music video came out too. And I think I think the AOR music fans they're gonna love it. You know, we've got the song from the original Fierce Heart album. We've got the new song from the record that came out last September. And that record is available online. And I use the word record, CD. You can get a physical, you can get a digital download copy if you want, or you can just watch the videos on YouTube, or it's on Spotify and TuneCore and iTunes, or wherever you get music from.
And by the way, the watchers out there should also know that there's another movie that Rex has a song in that I made that won Best Horror Film 2 years ago. It's called Devil's Five. And Devil's Five is finally going to be coming out this summer, I think June, July, by Random Media. And the first scene in the whole movie, Ralph Sheepers, the lead singer from Primal Fear, plays the lead role of the guy who's kind of looks like a bad guy. And what he's playing in his BMW is a song by Rex. And that's called Reanimate, right?
Yeah, it's the little instrumental thing, right?
Yeah, that right. Has a really cool kind of a George Lynch type, Mr. Scary type song. But obviously it's Rex. And I love that because you really just rock out in that. And it sounded so good coming out of his BMW cranked up, right?
Right.
So Rex has got a song in the Best Horror Film Devil's Five that I made, and Best Thriller that actually won 2 awards. Won Best Thriller Double Vision in the Hell's Kitchen Film Festival, and then we end up winning the top award in the International Film Festival, Manhattan. It was called the Audience Award, and we won that award in November.
Awesome.
So, okay, so just to finish this up, just kind of fun. I didn't do this with Steve, but I thought I'd do it with you. I'm going to throw a couple players, just offhand that come in my mind, and just tell me whatever word or words come to your mind when you hear their name and the way they play.
So we'll have a little Rorschach test, right?
Yeah. And okay. I'm going to go off the cuff. I'll go off the cuff, just whoever comes in my head.
Okay.
So whatever word you think of. Warren DeMartini.
Below the belt.
Okay.
There's two ways you can play guitar. You can play guitar. Let's see if I do this Lydian mode, and then if I play this chromatic thing that I've been working on, and then I can go to this 13th chord. You can play that way out of your head, or you can play. You can play really slinky and it's sexy and it grooves. I call that below the belt groove from Mr. Warren DeMartini.
Now, what about Randy Rhodes? God rest his soul.
Randy Rhodes is, well, he's an in-between. He's a bridge. He's the channel for the, he's Eddie Van Halen Part 2 from a technique standpoint, but he was moving in the same direction as that European, even though he's an American guitar player, but he was moving in that European style with the classical influence and the heavy melodic influence. And played very differently from Van Halen, but it was kind of like, well, there's Eddie, and then shortly thereafter came Randy, and then you don't really hear anything like Randy until later on. Then Yngwie Malmsteen comes out, but
yeah. So
there's some elements, but not that Randy and Yngwie, they don't sound anything like each other.
No,
Randy was iconic. He was unique. He was his own thing. But he's like the bridge to the neoclassical.
What about Gary Moore? God rest his soul.
The master.
Oh my God, he was incredible, right?
You know, I love you. You know, it's true. I'm botching it up there, but man, that was, he's got the hugest, fattest sound on the planet and brilliant, brilliant melodic player.
Could you call him a genius? Would you call him a genius?
No, I don't think so. I'd call him a Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say he was a genius. Eddie's the only guy who really truly reinvented rock guitar.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I would put on the cover of Guitar Player magazine used to be world's greatest guitar player. Well, Jimi Hendrix, undisputed. Wait a minute, when Van Halen came along, well, now you got to have like a line down the middle, and you got Jimi Hendrix, and then Eddie Van Halen, and then some people would argue, yeah, and then there's a third line for Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
And that's fair. It's, you know, not everybody would, but, you know, I love Stevie, but, you know, that to me, those are like the three most, those are the big three.
What do you think of the word for Eric Johnson?
He's driven. He hears a sound that nobody else hears. And for him to put out a sound without a keyboard player, just as a trio that fills all the spaces, and he's totally free.
Beautiful tone?
Beautiful, gorgeous tone, and unique. Doesn't sound like anybody else.
No, definitely not.
He's a hard one he's another asterisk type guy. He floats between categories. He's not easy to compartmentalize. I guess you could say he's jazz fusion, but he's rock. Yeah. You could say he's rock, but he's not rock. He's blues. Uh-huh. But he's not blues because he plays, you know, he knows all the modes and the scales and the theory, blah, blah, blah. But you can't just say he's a player because he does a lot of things with his tone. Mm-hmm. You know,
what about George Lynch?
George Lynch, love George Lynch. Style. You can call him Mr. Scary. I call him Mr. Classy.
Very distinct sound, right?
Oh, right. A huge influence for me. I love George Lynch.
You like his vibrato?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He does all that kind of thing. Warren DeMartini does the same thing. There are similarities from George Lynch to Warren DeMartini.
Yeah, and here's a guy that a lot of people never bring up. I don't know why, because he had to fill some pretty big shoes. But what did you think of Jakey Lee in Ozzy and then Badlands?
Jakey Lee is one of the most underrated guitar players, and he got shafted by Ozzy. He never got the credit. He's never gotten over it.
No.
And he would love to get credit where credit is due. I hope that Sharon will find it in her heart at some point. So yes, Jakey Lee wrote the music from Bark at the Moon and Ultimate Sin. That was some pretty brilliant guitar playing. But you know, if you think about Ozzy, who has like probably the greatest history of bringing new guitar players to the scene.
Yeah.
So first, you know, right out of the box, he hits a grand slam, walk-off World Series game 7 winning home run from Randy Rhodes.
Uh-huh.
And then, you know, he comes out with these monster guitar players, Brad Gillis,
yep,
and you had these other guys. And then, you know, then he comes out with Jakey Lee, and it's like, whoa. Imagine, put yourself in the shoes of Jakey Lee. He's like, oh my God, I have to follow.
The pressure.
I have to follow Randy Rhodes. Ooh. And, you know, Randy Rhodes, in a sense, had to follow Eddie Van Halen.
Yep.
I mean, the mold is cast and the bar is set high. And how in the world are you going to, you know, what do you have? See, and this is where we get back to it all comes back around. What is music? Music is communication.
Yeah.
Well, what's inside of you that you can bring forth? You got to bring something to the world. And Jakey Lee, he brought his own tone. He brought his own moves. Yeah, I mean, he had great rock star moves.
Oh yeah.
And he does this thing where he puts his thumb on the fingerboard and then he's like going like this and he's playing notes with his thumb and
Man.
and he played without a whammy bar, and so he would just like grab the tuning peg and just tune the guitar down. And
I think his riff for Rock and Roll Rebels, one of the greatest riffs of all time. Do you remember that riff?
Great riffs. He had a lot of great riffs. I don't know that one specifically, but let's see, what was the one?
That's Rock and Roll Rebel.
And he had a lot of chords that people don't use, and he's very a lot of his guitar work is kind of goes by quickly. But if you, as a player, if you start digging into it and you think, okay, let me look in all the obvious places, then you go, well, but that's not what. Where is it? Where is his notes coming from? And he had, he's doing great with Red Dragon Cartel.
Yeah,
great.
I don't know if you ever heard this story, Rex, but I found it really fascinating. I don't know how accurate or true it was. I had heard in the early 80s, when he was struggling, he shared an apartment with Warren DeMartini, and the two of them together would write music for Ozzy, first album, Bark at the Moon with him, and then Out of the Cellar for Rat. So you literally had two guys in the same place coming up with, lack of communication and all those great riffs and Rock and Roll Rebel and Slow Down. Two guys playing that in the same apartment. Can you imagine being a fly on the wall?
Unbelievable times.
Or the riff.
That was the 80s, just the creativity was flowing.
Yeah.
Along with the cocaine and everything else.
So
probably the herpes and all the rest of it.
So one last player to ask, word Rex Carroll.
Well, I've come to terms with I'm not the fastest, I'm not the best, I don't have, but I am. I would accept that I'm somewhat iconic.
Yes.
I have my own sound and my own style because, like I said before, I try to figure out what other people are doing. I can never quite get what other people are doing, but when I interpret what other people do, it just comes out sounding like me.
That's important. So, that's good.
And when you get to the point where you can accept that about yourself, that, I'm never going to be as good as player XYZ. I'm never going to be as good as Jakey Lee. Yeah, but you got to find what is it that I do.
That's right. That's
so
right.
I'm searching for my own voice.
And you know what, Rex, I was talking about Steve Lynch about this the other night. It shouldn't be a competition.
Well, it shouldn't be, but it always is. It's always a pissing contest.
Yeah, because I asked him when he was in LA with Van Halen and Lynch and all these other guys, did he feel a competition or was there a brotherhood? And he told me neither, because it wasn't that he tried to stay away from them or not pay attention, but he goes, the truth was I just focused on my own world. Like, I had nothing against those guys, right. But he said, I'm not into sports, so I wasn't trying to beat them. He goes, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the quickest. I was just doing my own thing.
Right. And he had some incredible riffs on some of those autograph songs.
He had that tapping.
Yeah.
Did I don't know if you know the story. One quick story. He told me, this was not even an interview. This was me and him were talking years ago. Because I was asking him, tell me some stories about on the road and all that. He told me on the first show with Van Halen, a security guard for Eddie came up to him And he said, listen, we know you play with all 10 fingers, the hammer on stuff. If you do that in this show, we'll break your fingers. Yep, we'll break your hands.
Oh, nice.
You cannot one up Eddie. So if you can play it a different way, fine, but don't be doing that because we can't have that on this tour. So to Steve's credit, I guess he played it a different way because think about it, that's your shot. You're not going to ruin a shot to open for Van Halen, which essentially got their career because he said they went up the East Coast. By the time they got to Madison Square Garden, which they had 2 shows there, record labels wanted to sign them. And they didn't even have a record out. So that's how they got signed.
Nice.
But it was told, think about that.
It sold really, really well too.
But think about that. Think about that, Rex. You can play, but don't play with your style.
Right. Well, it happens. That's not the first time I've heard other stories of that, like with Richie Blackmore and Deep Purple. And
Very
I've
cool.
heard about that. You know, you will not upstage Richie Blackmore.
Right.
You know, you'll be off the tour like in a New York minute.
Yeah.
I've heard those kinds of stories.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for tonight, Rex. We've had a great talk. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of your music. It blows my mind that sitting in that barracks in Kaiserslautern, West Germany, listening to my friend said, that's the guitar player I'm really impressed with. Oh my God. And then playing your solo from Echoes, that we became friends. We've done movies together now.
Right.
And I think we're going to eventually be doing a movie where you're in it in front of the camera.
Right. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
But that's just a wonderful thing called life.
Yeah. So thank you again, my friend, for coming on. And guys, check out Rex Carroll, Fierce Heart, King James, Whitecross. It's all good.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Have a great night, my friend.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.